All right. I guess it's time to break the ice. People tell me that um, my ideas are utopian, which I would rather hold than a dystopian idea. Right? They say, okay, smart guy, how would you solve um, insurance rates? Right? Oh, how would you do that? I was like, oh, okay. Let's think for a second. Why is insurance so expensive? Right? Why is the why is the insurance companies so expensive for us to be able to have coverage in case an accident happens? Well, let's talk about that for a moment. I know a guy who has gotten, I think he's probably up to at least half a dozen DUIs now. And some of the DUIs, he hadn't harmed anybody. He just maybe crossed a line or forgot to hit a turn signal, or he rolled through a stop sign, or something that just directed some attention to him, and then it was determined that he had been drinking, right? But there were other times that he piled into cars. He piled into a parked semi one time. He has created harm or loss to other people, and he didn't have to pay for it. I mean, maybe he did for like a month in jail, or a couple months in jail. But I mean, even when you go to jail, a lot of these people, they're, you get three hot meals, and you get a spot to sleep in, or a spot to sleep, and you have you can work out, and you can get tattoos, and you can trade and barter your desserts for the things that you want, and somebody else does the laundry, and somebody else pays all the bills, and somebody else takes care of everything for you, right? So it's not really teaching a person self responsibility. But what we should be doing, in my opinion, is, if you were in the commission of a crime when you had an accident, right? You had been drinking too much, or you were excessively speeding, or you blew through the stop sign, and you created harm or loss to another person. You should be personally responsible for that. The insurance company and the people who are being responsible shouldn't be paying for your mistakes. And it's not even a mistake, it's a conscious action. You went to the bar, you bought the beer, you consumed the beer, you or whatever it was, right? I mean, I'm not just picking on people who drink beer. And how do we do that, right? How do we create a rehabilitation center rather than just incarceration? Well, first off, I think we should be using the prison labor resources in a way that makes sense, not just the corporations a bunch of money. Perhaps the wages should be at a minimum wage, right? I mean, and here in Washington State, it's over $15 an hour for minimum wage. So let's just say I were to harm somebody, and they said, hey, you harmed me. Here's the proof, and I've determined that you owe me $5,000. Well, if I tell them to get bent and I'm not going to pay them $5,000, that's when they should be able to call up the police officer and say, hey, this guy owes me $5,000. Here's all the proof. We've already taken it to court, and it's been determined that I'm right, that he owes me this money, and he won't pay me. So then the police officer, with whatever level of force necessary to take that person, that irresponsible person, into custody, they do so. They check him into the jail. And now, should we be paying for the babysitting and incarceration for that person to be held responsible for their actions? Or should we figure out a reasonable amount for the supervision and incarceration of the individual, which really, $60 to $80 a day is probably a reasonable amount to have somebody else babysitting an adult, keeping them in a cage, or at least a contained from society. And so at $15 an hour, let's just do it at $60, right? Let's make it a deal of the day. At $15 an hour, if they were to be working for a corporation as a prison labor resource, the first 4 hours of their labor of each day would go towards paying for their incarceration and babysitting. If they decided they wanted to work 8 hours, that means they would have 4 hours or $60 going towards repayment of their victim. Now, if they owe $5,000, I don't have my, well, I'm shooting this video on my calculator, so we're just going to do some rough math here. But just say that's $6,000 that's owed, and they're making $60 in that 4 hours. What's that? That's 100 hours that they're going to have to work to earn the $6,000, right? So, or no, or is that's 100 days? Yeah, that's 100 days at $60. So they'd be incarcerated for roughly 3 months, and that would be probably a suitable punishment for somebody to realize that they need to be self-responsible. Now, if that person had harmed somebody and they say, "Hey, you owe me $6,000," and you're like, "You know what? You're right. I'm sorry. It was a poor judgment on my side. But look, I have skills that I can earn $50 or $60 an hour if I'm not incarcerated. And if I promise to pay you over the next 2 months the $6,000 that I owe you, um, is that suitable? Would that work with you?" And the person's like, "Oh, yeah, okay, that's reasonable." I mean, because it would take 3 months if you're incarcerated, and maybe it's only going to take a month and a half or 2 months not being incarcerated. And if they've learned their lesson and they are being self-responsible, we should hold grace for people. That, I mean, everybody's in a constant state of learning, right? But what that does is it makes it to where people are recognizing cause and effect of their actions, rather than an insurance company paying for their damages and then them just doing it again because they're like, well, insurance is cheap enough and I can afford that. And they're just going to pay for whatever I do to somebody. Then there's not much self-responsibility there. So anyway, that's one of the ways that we could get cheaper insurance in this utopian world that I'd like to create. 'Cause I mean, this dystopian world is what has been created by this cult year shaped by corporate interests and greed. What if we start focusing on logic and reason and accountability and helping people grow instead of just continuing along the path that we're on right now? Thanks for watching. If you like this content, like and share. If you have questions, if there's something that you'd like me to cover, I've had people really challenge me. They criticize me for not telling them everything that they want to know, but yet they're not asking a question of what they want to know. And if I just keep talking about things that I think are important, but people aren't yet ready for, then it's like I'm just talking to a pool of water here, right? It's not beneficial. But when we recognize how other people, other civilizations are solving problems and what makes sense, that's what we can bring into our local environments. Because luckily, locally happens everywhere for everyone. It's the way nature works naturally.